"Can I sleep with you?" He locked the door. Those 7 words shattered my world at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday night, spoken through tears by the only woman I'd ever truly loved. I'm Paul Everett, 29 years old, and I've spent the last 13 years loving Pamela Foster from a distance. First, as my little sister's untouchable best friend when I was a lovesick 16-year-old, then as the girl who slipped through my fingers at my sister's funeral 3 years ago when we almost kissed in the rain but she pulled away, and finally as the ghost who haunted every empty corner of my life while she built a future with someone else. But tonight, her voice trembling with a fear I'd never heard before, she was begging me to save her from the man she'd chosen instead. "There's still room at my place," I said, my hands shaking as I grabbed my keys, because the room I was offering wasn't just physical space, it was the room in my heart I'd kept locked and waiting for her since the day we met, the room I'd never let anyone else fill, the room that still held every unsaid "I love you" I'd swallowed down for over a decade. When I pulled up to that pristine suburban house and saw her standing under the streetlight, no coat, arms wrapped around herself, looking so small and broken, it physically hurt something inside me, cracked wide open. She stumbled toward my truck and collapsed into my arms. And God help me, even shaking and crying and terrified, she still fit against my chest, like she'd been made to be there. "You came," she whispered, and I could feel her heart racing against mine, could smell her shampoo mixed with tears, could feel 13 years of longing surge through my veins as I held her tighter than I'd ever held anything in my life. The drive back felt like moving through water. Every red light lasted forever. Every turn took us further from the life she'd known and closer to mine. She sat curled in the passenger seat, clutching a phone with a shattered screen, staring out the window like she was trying to memorize the streets in case she never saw them again. I wanted to ask her everything. I wanted to demand answers about Marcus, about the bruises I could see forming on her wrist when her sleeve rode up, about why tonight was different from all the other nights she must have suffered alone. But her breathing was still uneven, her hands still trembling, and I knew questions could wait. Right now, she just needed to feel safe. When we pulled into my driveway, she looked at the small, weathered house with a sagging porch and overgrown hedges, and something softened in her face. "This is Uncle Ray's place," she said quietly. "Sarah used to talk about staying here. She said it felt like home." My throat tightened at the mention of my sister. Her room's still set up. I never changed it. "If you want, you can stay there tonight." Pamela turned to look at me, really look at me, and in the dim glow of the dashboard lights, I could see tears pooling in her eyes again. "Sarah's room?" she whispered. "You kept it?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. We sat there for a moment in the darkness, the engine ticking as it cooled. Both of us, knowing that walking through that door would change everything between us. Finally, she reached across the console and took my hand, her fingers ice cold and trembling. "Thank you for coming to get me, Paul. I didn't think you would. After everything, after I chose him over." She stopped, her voice breaking. "I didn't think I deserved your help." I squeezed her hand gently. "You always deserve better than what he gave you, Pam. Always." Inside, the house smelled like coffee and the faint mustiness of a place where one person lived alone. I flipped on lights as we walked through the living room with its worn couch and the TV I barely watched, the kitchen with dishes drying in the rack from this morning's breakfast. My work boots sat by the door, my high-vis vest draped over a chair. Everything about this place screamed bachelor, lonely, stuck. But Pamela didn't seem to notice. She followed me down the narrow hallway, her footsteps quiet on the old hardwood, until I stopped at the second bedroom door. My hand rested on the knob for a moment, and I realized I was holding my breath. I hadn't opened this door in weeks, maybe months. "It might smell a little stale," I said quietly, then pushed it open. The room looked exactly as Sarah had left it the last time she'd crashed here, during college band posters covering the walls, Paramore and The Killers, and a dozen indie groups I'd never heard of. Bookshelves stuffed with fantasy novels, their spines cracked from multiple readings. The purple comforter pulled neat across the bed because I'd straightened it one grief-stricken afternoon and never unmade it again. Sarah's old acoustic guitar leaning in the corner, covered in stickers from places she'd traveled, fairy lights strung across the ceiling that I'd never had the heart to take down. Pamela stood frozen in the doorway, one hand pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Oh my God," she breathed. "It's exactly the same. Paul, it's exactly how I remember." She stepped inside slowly, like she was entering sacred ground, her fingers trailing along the bookshelf spines. We used to lay on that bed for hours, talking about everything. She'd play that guitar and make me sing even though I can't carry a tune. We'd stay up until 3 in the morning planning our futures, and she'd tell me I was going to do amazing things. Her voice cracked. She was my best friend. Losing her broke something in me I didn't know how to fix. And I think that's why I let Marcus in. I was so empty after she died, and he filled that space, and I convinced myself it was love, when really I was just desperate not to feel alone anymore. I leaned against the doorframe, keeping my distance, even though everything in me wanted to cross that room and hold her again. "Sarah loved you like a sister. She used to tell me all the time how proud she was of you, how you were going places, how you had this light in you that made everyone around you better." Pamela turned to face me, her eyes red and swollen. I didn't go anywhere. I gave up my job at the library because Marcus said his real estate commissions were enough for both of us. I gave up my apartment and moved into his house. I stopped seeing my friends because he'd get upset if I made plans without him. I stopped being me, Paul. Somewhere along the way, I just disappeared, and I don't even know when it happened. She sank down onto Sarah's bed, her hands gripping the purple comforter like it was a lifeline. He started small, asking where I was going, who I'd be with. Then he wanted access to my phone. Then he said I didn't need my own car because he could drive me wherever I needed to go. Then he took my credit cards and said we should consolidate finances. Every time I pushed back, he'd make me feel crazy, like I was overreacting, like I was ungrateful for everything he did for me. And tonight, when I asked him why he was tracking my location, he lost it. He screamed at me that I was paranoid, that I was accusing him of things he'd never do, and when I tried to leave, he grabbed my phone and threw it against the wall. Then he shoved me out the door and locked it behind me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I stood outside his house for 20 minutes trying to figure out who to call. My parents moved to Arizona last year. My other friends are all couple friends with Marcus, and they wouldn't believe me anyway because he's so charming when other people are around. And then I thought of you. I thought of Sarah's funeral and how you held me when I fell apart and how safe I felt in your arms, even though we barely knew each other anymore. So I called, and you came. And I still can't believe you actually came. I moved then, crossing the room to sit on the floor beside the bed, my back against Sarah's old desk. Close enough that Pamela could reach me if she wanted, but giving her space to breathe. I'll always come for you, Pam. No matter what. No matter when. You call, and I'll be there. She looked down at me, and something shifted in her expression, something vulnerable and raw and achingly hopeful. "Can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" she asked. I nodded, my heart hammering. At Sarah's funeral, when we were standing outside the church in the rain, and you were holding me while I cried, I almost kissed you. I wanted to so badly it physically hurt. Your arms were around me and your face was so close, and for just a second I thought, maybe if I kissed you, I wouldn't feel so broken. But then I pulled away because I was scared. Scared of what it would mean, scared I was using you, scared of everything. And a week later, I met Marcus at some work thing, and he was confident and put together and safe in a way that felt like the opposite of all the scary feelings you made me feel. So I chose him. I chose wrong, Paul. I chose so wrong. My breath caught in my throat. 3 years. I'd spent 3 years convincing myself that moment in the rain had been one-sided, that I'd imagined the electric charge between us, that she'd pulled away because she didn't feel what I felt. I wanted you to kiss me, I said, my voice rough. I've wanted that since I was 16 years old and you first walked through our front door with Sarah. You had on this yellow sundress and you laughed at one of my stupid jokes and I fell so hard I didn't know which way was up. Every time you came over after that, I'd find excuses to be around. I'd help with homework I'd already finished just to sit next to you. I'd drive you and Sarah places even when I had other plans. And at the funeral, when you were in my arms, I thought maybe I finally had a chance. But then you pulled away, and I figured I'd been wrong about everything. Pamela was staring at me now, fresh tears sliding down her cheeks. You loved me all that time? I never stopped. The words hung between us, heavy with years of unspoken truth. Outside, the October wind rattled the windows and made the old house creak. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. Normal sounds from a normal night, except nothing about this night was normal. Nothing about this moment was anything I'd ever imagined. Pamela slid off the bed and sat down on the floor beside me, so close our shoulders touched. She didn't say anything. Just leaned her head against my shoulder and let out a long, shaky breath. We sat like that for a long time, surrounded by Sarah's things, wrapped in the ghost of my sister's presence. And for the first time in 3 years, the room didn't feel like a shrine anymore. It felt like it was serving its purpose, giving shelter to someone who needed it, the way Sarah would have wanted. Eventually, Pamela's breathing evened out, and her body relaxed against mine. I thought she'd fallen asleep until she spoke again, her voice soft and tired. Paul? Yeah? I'm scared. I'm scared Marcus is going to come looking for me. I'm scared I'll never be strong enough to actually leave him. I'm scared you'll realize I'm too broken to fix, and you'll regret letting me stay. But most of all, I'm scared that when I'm finally okay again, you'll figure out I'm not worth the 13 years you spent loving me. I turned my head to look at her, our faces inches apart, and I could see every fear written in her eyes. Listen to me, I said firmly. You're not broken. You're hurt. And there's a difference. Broken things can't heal. Hurt things can. And you're worth everything, Pam. You always have been. The question isn't whether you're worth it. The question is whether you'll let yourself believe that. She held my gaze for a long moment, searching my face for something truth, maybe, or certainty, or hope. Then, slowly, carefully, like she was testing whether the ground would hold her weight, she reached up and touched my cheek. Her fingers were still cold, but they weren't shaking anymore. Can you stay? She whispered. Just for tonight. I don't want to be alone. So I stayed. I sat on that floor with my back against Sarah's desk while Pamela curled up on the bed under the purple comforter, and I told her stories about Sarah until her eyes drifted closed and her breathing went deep, and even I told her about the time Sarah tried to dye her hair purple in this very room and ended up with orange stripes. About the time she brought home a stray cat and hid it here for 3 days before our mom found out. About the last conversation we'd had before she died, when she told me I needed to take more chances. That playing it safe was just another way of being afraid. And as I talked, watching Pamela sleep in the soft glow of those fairy lights, I realized Sarah had been right. I'd been playing it safe my whole life, loving Pamela from a distance, never taking the risk of telling her how I felt. But tonight that changed. Tonight I'd driven through the dark to rescue her. Tonight I'd opened up my home and my heart. Tonight I'd finally taken the chance. And I had no idea if it would work out. If she'd choose me when she was strong enough to choose anything, if we'd make it past whatever storm was coming when Marcus realized she wasn't coming back. But for the first time in 13 years, the possibility was real. She was here, in my house, sleeping in my sister's bed, and tomorrow we'd figure out what came next. Together, I woke to the smell of coffee and something else, cinnamon, maybe toast. For a second, I forgot where I was, forgot what had happened, until I heard soft humming coming from the kitchen. Pamela. I pulled on a t-shirt and walked out to find her standing at my stove wearing one of Sarah's old band shirts she must have found in the dresser and a pair of my sweatpants rolled up at the ankles. Her hair was still damp from a shower, pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was flipping something in my ancient frying pan with a concentration that made her bite her lower lip. Morning, I said, my voice still rough with sleep. She turned and smiled, actually smiled, and it hit me like a punch to the chest because I hadn't seen her smile in so long, I'd forgotten how it transformed her whole face. Hey, I hope you don't mind. I found some eggs and bread. You really need to go grocery shopping, by the way. Your fridge is depressing. I usually just grab whatever's on sale. She plated the eggs and toast, setting one in front of me at the small kitchen table before sitting down with her own. We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the morning light filtering through the window, making everything feel soft and possible. But I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes kept darting to her shattered phone on the counter. "He's been calling," she said quietly, following my gaze. 23 times since last night. He left voicemails too. I haven't listened to them. My jaw tightened. "You don't have to. I know. But Paul, he's not going to just let this go. Marcus doesn't lose. That's what he always says. Winners don't quit. Quitters don't win. He'll come looking for me. Then we'll deal with it when he does." She set down her fork, her appetite clearly gone. "You don't understand. He's smart. He never hit me where anyone could see. He never screamed at me in public. To everyone who knows us, he's this successful, charming guy, and I'm the lucky girl who gets to be with him. If I try to get a restraining order, what proof do I have? Some bruises on my wrists that could be from anything? A locked door? He'll make me sound crazy, Paul. He's good at that." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Then we document everything from now on. Every call, every text, every time he shows up. We take pictures of those bruises. We talk to a lawyer. You're not going back there, Pam. Not ever." Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded, squeezing my hand back. "I need to get my things, my clothes, my documents, everything. It's all at his house. We'll get them, but not alone. I'll go with you, and we'll bring someone else too. Maybe someone from my work crew. Big guys who won't let him try anything." She laughed, a shaky sound that was half sob. "You'd really do that? Rally your coworkers to help some girl you haven't talked to in 3 years? You're not some girl, you're Pamela. And yeah, I'd do that. I'd do anything." The moment hung between us, heavy with meaning, until her phone buzzed again on the counter. We both looked at it. The screen was shattered, but I could still see Marcus's name flashing. Pamela's whole body went rigid. "Don't answer it," I said. "I have to. If I don't, She stopped, realizing what she was about to say. "He'll what? Come here? Get angrier?" The fact that she was afraid of what he'd do if she didn't answer told me everything I needed to know about the last 3 years of her life. She stood up, her hand hovering over the phone, then pulled back like it had burned her. "No, you're right. I don't have to answer. I don't have to do anything he wants anymore." And she walked away from it, leaving it buzzing angrily on the counter, and came back to sit at the table with me. Her hands were shaking, but her jaw was set. "Tell me about your job," she said, clearly trying to focus on anything else. "What's it like working nights at the warehouse?" So I told her about my crew, Big Mike, who'd worked there 20 years and knew every trick to make the shift go faster. Maria, who kept photos of her grandkids taped inside her locker and brought homemade tamales every Friday. Young Danny, who was saving up for community college. I told her about the rhythm of the work, the satisfaction of solving logistical puzzles, the quiet drive home through empty streets when the shift ended. And as I talked, I watched her relax, watched the fear fade from her eyes as she got lost in the mundane details of my ordinary life. "It sounds nice," she said softly, steady, predictable, safe. "It is. But it's also lonely. Coming home to an empty house every night, cooking for one, watching TV alone. I got used to it, but it's not the same as having someone to share it with." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and something shifted in her expression. "Paul, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why didn't you ever date anyone else? In 13 years, you must have had chances." I leaned back in my chair, considering how honest to be. I did, a few times. But it never went anywhere because I was always comparing them to you. Nobody ever measured up to the girl in the yellow sundress who laughed at my stupid jokes. I know that probably sounds pathetic. It sounds like the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. Her voice cracked. "Marcus told me he loved me 3 weeks after we met. He said I was special. That he'd been waiting his whole life for someone like me. I thought it was romantic then. Now I realized he was just love-bombing me, making me dependent on his approval before he started taking everything away. But you You loved me quietly for 13 years and never asked for anything in return. That's real, Paul. That's what love actually looks like. Before I could respond, a loud knock on the front door made us both jump. Pamela's face went white. "It's him," she whispered. "He found me." I stood up, positioning myself between her and the door. "Stay here." The knocking came again, harder this time, followed by Marcus's voice. "Pamela!" "I know you're in there. Open the door. We need to talk about this." My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice steady. "Stay in the kitchen, Pam. Don't come out." I walked to the door, checked that the deadbolt was locked, and opened it just wide enough to see out. Marcus stood on my porch in an expensive suit, his hair perfectly styled, his smile cold and calculated. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with a kind of build that came from a gym membership and personal trainers. Everything about him screamed money and confidence. "You must be Paul," he said, his tone friendly but his eyes hard. "Marcus Chen, Pam's fiancé. There's been a misunderstanding and I need to speak with her. She doesn't want to see you." His smile didn't waver. "I think she can make that decision herself, don't you? Pamela, honey, please come out. Let's talk about this, like adults." I heard movement behind me and turned to see Pamela standing in the kitchen doorway, her arms wrapped around herself. "Don't," I said quietly. But she stepped forward, her voice stronger than I expected. "I'm not coming back, Marcus. I'm done." His expression flickered just for a second, a flash of rage before the smooth mask slipped back into place. "Baby, you're not thinking clearly. You're upset about our fight last night. I get it. I shouldn't have lost my temper. But running to your high school friend's house, that's a bit dramatic, don't you think? You locked me out in the cold. You threw my phone. You've been controlling every aspect of my life for 2 years. I've been taking care of you, providing for you, loving you. And this is how you repay me?" By running to some, he looked at me with barely concealed contempt. "Some warehouse worker who's been carrying a torch for you since high school? Paul came when I called. That's more than you ever did." Marcus's jaw clenched. "Fine. You want space? Take a few days. But you'll need your things, right? Your documents, your clothes. Why don't we meet at the house tomorrow afternoon and you can pack everything up? Civilized, mature, just you and me." "I'm not going there alone," Pamela said. "Then bring your knight in shining armor here. Noon tomorrow. The door will be unlocked." He looked directly at me. "But remember, Paul, that house is mine. Everything in it is mine, including her." The next day, I called in a favor. Big Mike from my crew showed up at 11 in his truck, arms like tree trunks crossed over his chest. "So this is the girl you've been moping about for years," he said when I introduced him to Pamela. "She's prettier than you described, kid." Pamela actually blushed, and I felt something warm spread through my chest. We drove to Marcus's house in convoy, Mike following behind us. The whole way there, Pamela's leg bounced nervously, and she kept checking her phone. "What if he doesn't let me take everything?" she asked. "What if he makes a scene? Then Mike and I make sure you get out safely, and we call the cops." "But Pam, you have every right to your own belongings. He can't keep them." The house looked even more perfect in daylight manicured lawn, designer shutters, the kind of place that screamed success. But now, I could see it for what it really was. A prison with good curb appeal. Marcus opened the door before we could knock, his smile tight and controlled. "Pamela, Paul, and you brought a friend. How thoughtful." "This is Mike," I said evenly. "He's here to help carry boxes." "Of course, come in. I've already started packing some of your things, honey." Saved you the trouble. We followed him inside and I immediately understood why Pamela had felt trapped here. Everything was white and gray and minimalist, sterile, like a hotel lobby. No warmth, no personality, nothing that suggested Pamela had ever lived here at all. "Where are my photos?" Pamela asked, looking around. "The ones of me and Sarah? They were on the mantle. I packed them. They're in the boxes upstairs." Something in his tone made my skin crawl. We climbed the stairs, Mike's heavy footsteps behind us like a promise of protection. In the master bedroom, I saw what Marcus had done. 3 cardboard boxes sat on the bed, already taped shut. "Everything's in there," Marcus said. "Clothes, documents, personal items." I was very thorough. Pamela moved toward the boxes, but I caught her arm. "Open them first. Make sure everything's there." Marcus's smile faltered. "Are you accusing me of something?" "Just being careful." Pamela opened the first box, and immediately her face crumpled. Inside were her clothes, but they'd been cut. Every single piece, shirts, dresses, jeans, sliced with scissors into useless strips of fabric. "What did you do?" she whispered. "I told you," Marcus said calmly. "Everything in this house is mine, including the clothes I bought you. If you're leaving, you don't get to take my generosity with you." I stepped forward, fury burning in my chest, but Mike's hand on my shoulder stopped me. "Not worth it, kid. Let's just get her out of here." Pamela opened the second box with shaking hands. Her documents were there: birth certificate, social security card, passport, but the photos were gone. Every picture of her and Sarah carefully cut out and destroyed. The frames